Hello, everyone. This is Pastors David and Alisa Hopper doing a Q&A from our last week's message, which was 1 Corinthians 6. Alisa, how are you today?
Hi, good. How are you?
I am good. I'm doing well. If you are on here, let us know you're here as well. Say hi. Tell us where you're watching from, who you're with. I would love to be able to see that. There it is. So if you make a comment, if you have a question, you can throw it into the comments and we'll do our best to follow along with those. So while people are saying stuff online, let's start off with this. Do you still have your Lego glasses from Sunday?
I never actually took a pair. You stole mine. So
Oh, I left mine on the pulpit. So both the yellow and the green are still up there.
So you stole mine and then left yours.
Did our kids bring them home? Did they have any?
I don't know. You want me to ask?
Not unless they're right there.
I haven't, no, but I can text them. I haven't really seen them have any. So
Only Noelle goes to children's church.
Oh, yeah.
So she'd be the only ones that have got them or got them.
Yeah. I could mute myself really quick and ask her. Hold on.
Those of you still listening to me, do you have your Lego glasses? And did you talk to your kids in the car afterwards about identity? I would love to know that. All right, while we're waiting for that. So what did you think about the Lego glasses?
I thought they were adorable. A little small for my face, which is funny because I have a tiny face, but
what about like the idea that they can connect to the question of identity and who you are and who you represent?
Oh, the symbolism.
Yeah, that's really my.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was great. It was a great representation.
I think it was too. That one actually fit. This week I am doing Grogu, the Lego.
Oh, the child,
Baby Yoda. So I am trying to include this into my sermon on Sunday, and it's a little bit harder. I think what I'm going to say, those of you watching this, you're going to have a little bit of a heads up, but I think what I'm going to say is the Mandalorian and the Baby Yoda had this commitment to each other through difficult, challenging situations. And there was a part in the story where Mandalorian could have given up on that for a lot of money, but kept that commitment. And that's kind of the relationship we have with God. I don't know if that's too far of a stretch, but that's where I'm leaning, putting the final touches on it.
It's never too far of a stretch to include Star Wars references. It's fun.
That's the thing. We're doing the Lego series, and this is a cool Lego. Let's
talk about how big that is. I mean, usually you see the box and you're like, oh, it's huge, and then it's this big, and that looks actually pretty large. I think Nate made it in 5 minutes too. That's what's funny.
He's amazing. I don't know if you're online watching, let us know what you think, or if you watch this later, let us know what you think in the comments about connecting Baby Yoda to commitment this Sunday as we do 1 Corinthians 7. Okay. I only have two really follow-up questions, I think, from Sunday. The first is the thought process of being wronged, being, what was the other one?
Here we go.
Cheated. What did you say?
Sorry, I thought you were frozen for a minute and now you're here.
Oh, being wronged and being cheated. What was your takeaway from that part of it?
I thought you were right on, because I think this life is too short for the reasons we're here to let stuff like that get to us, you know? I think, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. I think you were right on. I mean, how many times have we really stood up and fought for something that really isn't that eternal or eternal at all? And then we end up, you know, in a worse place than when we started. Right? Yeah. It doesn't usually get us to a better place to fight for something that doesn't matter all that much.
Yeah. If you're watching this and you're on here, what were your thoughts about that part? Because that's the hardest part. the Roman law stuff was really interesting to me. The Greek law, how it's kind of in the middle of the marketplace, and how it was Paul's messages. Why would you take it to the public? That part I understood, and I could, yeah, totally connect with that. But then when we got to why not just be wronged, man, that is such a huge step for people in this world. And so that's where I was just curious of, if you're watching and that part's hard, I want to hear about that. Or if you have questions about that, let's talk through that.
I think that has so much to do with personality type too. When you are a type A personality, or maybe a leader, kind of an Enneagram 8 type, whatever you want to call it, you always jump to defending yourself. And you're not an 8, so I'm not saying you, but those 8s or the type A's or those leadership type people really want to defend their name and always be, in our minds, we're righteous. We're the ones with the right view. And so to be wronged and just let that go is a really tough thing.
Yeah. And cheated. I mean, who's going to let themselves be cheated?
Yeah.
So where does the line on that? Where do you think God says, no, you should stand up for yourself?
I think standing up for yourself is fine. I think when you, or not being, if you don't want to be wronged, if you are in the right and there's an opportunity to right the situation, then for sure. But if it goes to, taking it to a court and, maybe even there are so many small claims court cases every year. And, some of them are on TV, and I see those and just go, man, I don't know. I understand wanting to be right, but it's stuff like for $300 or there's stuff that you've got to just let go, because I think for a Christian, it's almost shameful to just be so, that's the wrong thing to say as a Christian. I think for anyone with pride, it's a little bit shameful to go and, fight for that, whatever it is. It's almost like, just save your energy. It takes time off your life to fight for stuff like that. But if it is something where somebody's cheating you and you can right the situation without going public with it, then yeah, let's stand up for yourself. I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I was just trying to think of scenarios, and each scenario has a different, I was thinking about how many times I call the cable bill or the cell phone bill because it's not right and you're cheating me. And I think that's fine. And so my scenario in my head, I said, it's when I have an opportunity to show Christ to someone. Perhaps you get hit in the parking lot, and it's a small scratch, not the kind you would turn into insurance, one you would take care of yourself. And it's a brother, and you're like, you know what? Don't worry about it. And then he's like, no, I want to. And then you're like, no, so I'm just thinking of, it's all about the scenario in which you can show Christ, especially with the cheated one. If you're using people in the church, and I always want to give my business to people in the church, you should go above and beyond, not only to pay your bill, but maybe even go beyond the bill in how you tip. That's where I think sometimes believers will go the opposite way with that and actually cheat someone because they're a Christian instead of blessing them because they're a Christian. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've seen that.
I think we all have. Anyone who has been a server or a waitress or a waiter, whatever you want to call them, has, seen that stereotype, that Christian, that churchgoer come and be cheap, right? So I think that's a kind of a different mindset, a different story there. But yeah, when you're talking about sharing Christ's love, sure, be wronged, but that's also not really in our Western mindset. We fight for what's right. We fight for justice. And I don't think that's wrong. I think when it escalates, why bother?
I mean, the Bible says if you're hit on your cheek, what are you supposed to do? Turn the other cheek. And that's another scenario that we just don't, it's hard for us in this society, at least. Maybe it's an American thing, I don't know, but it's really hard for us to like put those principles into real life scenarios.
I also think that's a really different culture. That was when, a Jewish leader would come and ask you to do something. At least this is what I understood from the study, is they would come and ask you to do something, and then you would do it and they'd make you go further, and you would be like, okay, or you'd go that's where go the extra mile came from. I mean, it wasn't a very eloquent way of my putting it, but I think that was a different place and culture, a different time. Now, we don't really have, at least in America, we don't really have that clear-cut, class system where it's okay for someone to boss you around or, make you their servant. That's not really our thing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, it's really hard. And nobody's putting anything in the comments. So I'm waiting for people to ask questions about this area because I feel like it's a tough area, but I'll let you do it afterwards. I'll move to the next section of the sermon on Sunday. The next section moved into, again, representing Christ. That's what the whole thing was about, how we represent Christ and how our face and our actions and our church should represent Christ. And I gave a couple examples in the message about churches I've been to where it seems like the angry faced people are the ones at the door, and you walk in, you feel like you're walking into a club that you weren't invited to, and it's just so hard, so difficult that's how we're representing Christ. How do you think we can do that better as a church, as Christians, really be more welcoming?
I think talking about it. I think making people aware of it. There are so many churches who have been around for so long and just kind of do things the way they do it. And they do things the way they've always done it. And until you have someone come in and go, hey, because people who go there all the time and have been there for 10 years or whatever, they know where to go. They know what to do. They don't need signage. They don't need people helping them. And everything is comfortable and it feels like home to them because that is their home, their church home and their church family. But when you're new and you come in for the first time and you think, oh my gosh, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to bring my kids. I mean, you and I have been to so many churches, especially in the last 6 years, maybe. It's incredible, maybe 7 years. It's incredible how people just don't take what we call the first touch ministry seriously.
Right.
There's a lot of them that do it really well, and there's people standing out there, and it's kind of like, like one of those stores where you're just bombarded with salespeople and whatever. They do a great job, and they smile, and they've got the bulletin, and they tell you where to go, and you've got a check-in system and signage everywhere. And then there are those that it's like nobody new has ever come, and so
that's what our question should have been. Right. I wish I would have said, now that we've said this, what's a funny experience you had visiting a new church? That would have been such a better entry to the sermon.
Yeah, but I'm not sure people where we are have really had those, because
I think everybody has a funny experience when they have attended churches.
I don't know. I mean, I've talked to maybe some, but I've talked to so many people at our church who have been there for so long,
Yeah. Well, if you are watching this, I would love to hear your funny story. So if you watch this later, put it in the comments, because I want to see that, because we've all had them. I told one of mine in the service. What was one of yours? What's the funniest experience first time visiting a church? And I wish I would have prepped you so you could think of it. Or do you have one off the top of your head?
Let me think. What I have been to a few where they make their doctrinal beliefs, the little things that aren't really, they don't make or break salvation in any way, they really make those prominent. And it's always so awkward, but I'm trying to think of something that is, right at the top of my head. What is yours? I know you have one.
Well, the one I shared was when I was in like the hallway,
Yeah.
not even knowing I was in the right place. And they were so mean. It was weird. It was dark. They had TVs up on the wall, but they didn't, you know how that's where you do the announcements, but they didn't have the announcements on it. They look like the screen out of, what's that movie where the lady's face is covered by her hair?
Oh,
what's the movie name? Ring?
Stephen King?
Is it Ring?
Yeah, The Ring. Oh yes, The Ring. Okay.
It looked like that kind of a TV with the stuff across the screen because it wasn't on quite all the way. And I'm like, this is a church. Like, I'm in a church building right now, and they start in 5 minutes, and there's no one here, and that does not surprise me. I had a church. I went and I sat in a chair, and someone walked up to me and goes, is that your chair? And I'm looking around going, what? Because I was just I didn't understand the question. And they go, where were you sitting earlier? And I'm like, I wasn't here earlier. Like, I did get there late. Maybe that's why he was mad, because I took his seat.
Oh, okay.
But I was like, I don't know you. I've never been here before. I sat in your chair, obviously. I did not mean to. And my first experience at this church and with you and with Christians, let's say I'm new to Christianity, is this anger for being in your chair. And I actually did leave. I go, oh, I'll go back to my chair. And I left the building. Because I'm like, I don't want to be here. I hate this place.
My chair at home.
Yeah.
That's really funny. I can't really think of anything off the bat. I do remember a few where I could not find like bigger churches. I could not find the children's area to save my life. I didn't know where to take Noelle. Then I was late because I'm roaming around all these hallways. Some of them, in fact, a recent one, would always like close one whole floor or close off the children's if they didn't have enough kids, and you'd never know what was happening. Yeah. So that was weird. And that was all pre-COVID. So, but for the most part,
we have a response. So Brian says at Saddleback, he visited, I was greeted by at least 20 people with high fives, hugs, handshakes. I was greeted before going into the men's restroom, which was a little too much.
That's funny.
I've actually been to Saddleback. And the other one that did that, Saddleback was like that. There's a reason why they're big. I mean, the bigger churches actually do this really well because they do this and people care about this. It's kind of interesting. But the other one was the guy people love to hate in Houston.
Joel Osteen.
Joel Osteen. I was at his church and they literally had someone every 20 feet saying, hi, how are you today? And it actually was a little too much. I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. It just felt weird. But I'm like, I would rather you feel that way than the opposite, because the opposite's way worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go to Saddleback just to see it.
Saddleback's amazing.
Yeah. I will say it does take time to train your leaders. So if you're a small church, if you're a church that has kind of new leadership, if they've always done things the same way and you're kind of going, I think we need to change this. I will say everything takes time and you just have to kind of get people on board and sort of love them into it and show them that their gift and their job is to welcome people in. And it's for spreading the gospel and for letting them know that they are loved by God and they are loved by us. And we're a church, community, family, whatever you want to call it. So it does take time. And I mean, training might be the wrong word, but just like an example, kind of a meeting, a training process for your staff, people in charge of it. It's very intentional and very deliberate.
Yeah. And hopefully we all get better at it. And that was the point of that in the message. And then where I ended was food for the stomach and stomach for the food. That was a Corinthian quote that really, I didn't know that. I in my study found that this last week, and I'm like, oh, that really made sense to me, how they connected the idea of doing anything you want sexually, because it's just like food. You are hungry and it fulfills a pleasure, it fills a need. And so when you're hungry, you do it. And sex is the same way. It's a pleasure, but it's also how we procreate and create, people in the world. It's a need. And so it's the same thing as when you're hungry and you eat food, if you have sexual desires, you should do them. And I was like, oh, what a fascinating way to take scripture and a gift from God and mess it up. What a fascinating way.
Well, and I know you know this, and I know you just didn't say it just now, but if anyone happens to hear this later or right now, whatever, it is also, that sexual desire that they took and perverted and just made foul and vile with prostitutes and everything like that, anything you wanted anytime. It is a gift that God gave, not just for procreation, and this is all I wanted to add, but for pleasure inside of a monogamous marriage, right? So It is something that brings you closer together. And, that the pure love of marriage is just a copy of what Jesus's love for his bride is. So it's an odd way of describing it, but I mean, the Bible does describe it that way. So
yeah,
I think that should just be added.
I've just been working on the sermon this morning, and just the next chapter, he really goes into the idea, this concept of within marriage, it is a gift, it's a blessing. You shouldn't withhold, is actually where he's talking about. You shouldn't withhold this from each other. It's so part of what your marriage is, which I thought was interesting, that he really, really speaks to that. And we always try, and I'm getting too far in my sermon now, but we mess it up when we take it outside of the way God designed it. And that's what the Corinthians were doing, because the culture had done it to such a high level. Diana says, our church in the Bay Area lived by the thought that every visitor were not greeted by at least 5 people. We missed it. So that's cool. It's on a delay. They're about 2 or 3 minutes behind us. But
Okay.
The idea of greeting has to be part of your culture. That's so good. Thank you, Diana.
Yeah, I like that. And I like that in every department. I like that at every table in the front courtyard. I like that in every, just everywhere where people go to sign up for stuff. It's so important that someone is there to greet.
I'm looking at my sermon from Sunday. How'd you do on the easy questions I asked at the end? Do you remember them? It was, how'd you represent Christ this last week? How did you invite somebody? How did you greet someone this morning? How did you smile at someone this morning?
That's a really long list. It's like 12 questions.
It really was. And I probably should have just did like 1 or 2 in hindsight. It's too much. I have so much in my head sometimes that I'm trying to get out.
I think for some people, especially seasoned Christians or people who have known God for a long time and have served him, I don't know that you can always calculate that stuff. Because if I'm going out, that's why masks are so hard, because my facial expressions are part of how I, express greetings. And I mean, they are for everybody. But I'm constantly, I don't want to say fake smiling, but just making myself smile. Just so people, I mean, there's so many people you pass who are just angry and frustrated, and drivers that are mad, and it's crazy. Especially, I mean, I know that Orange County was like this, LA and those cities are like this. They're a little more this way, but people in the mountains come to kind of get away from people. And so when they have to go do their errands or grocery shopping or something, it's kind of irritating to them that other people are there. And so it's probably nice and different for them to have someone smiling at them and saying hello or holding the door, whatever you got to do. But my point is, those questions, I don't really take note of all that and calculate it, because if you're trying to make it a part of your life and not like checking off boxes daily, But yeah. I did appreciate them to remind me.
You have to put on the glasses every morning and say, I'm going to do this today. And I have
I'm a Lego master.
I'm a hermit. I like being alone. I like quiet. I have to actively push myself to be this way. And so you're right. It has to become part of your life. The hard questions at the end, using your spiritual gift, going out of your way to show Christ when you are cheated and wronged. Any of those strike you as too much, or any thoughts?
I don't remember them. Can you remind me of a couple?
Well, I just gave you 3 of them, and the last 2 were showing Christ to someone different from you, and I don't have it up anywhere, but I think it was showing Christ to someone's different than you.
Yeah, for sure. I think just even befriending and listening to someone who believes differently than you do about God or a God figure or whatever they believe, and actually being their friend and not constantly trying to proselytize or convert them. It's just about caring and loving them as well and welcoming them into your community as well. How else are you going to show them God's love if they believe something different?
Yeah. And I think the scripture really, really speaks to that. And especially the idea that actions are more powerful than words, and that your light comes out of you. It's why social media is really not where you should be getting in arguments. Those are words. They're not seeing your actions of love in the midst of speaking truth. You're not wrong in what you're saying. Most of you, some of you might be, but most of you are not wrong, but you're speaking in words when our actions show our light. And that was the whole sermon. It's our representation of him has to come out in so many areas of our life, our church, our home, how we go out and be, etc., etc. All right. Any questions you guys have out there, throw them into the comments, and we'll do our best to answer them even after we close this down. Any final thoughts, Alisa?
Any final thoughts? No, I'm actually really looking forward to, well, I guess yes, if I keep talking. I'm really looking forward to the message this coming Sunday because it expands on that whole Corinthians church and the things that they were doing and what it actually means for us in our culture today. And I honestly believe how we have twisted it a lot of times in our churches and made it into what we think it is or what we want it to be. I think it's just so important to look at context and history and who was being addressed. So I'm excited.
And I should probably, I had to give an interesting warning. How some families bring their young kids. This is probably not the week to do it. It's a lot of sexual talk. But if you have a high schooler and above, I would highly suggest you bring them because it is a lot of conversation of the importance of doing it the right way. And so it's kind of fascinating. And if you're single, there's a bit of a subject in there on that in this week. And if you are early in dating, and also about why you stay married. And so it's an interesting week, really practical. So I'm trying to, anyway, it's been a hard subject. What are you saying?
If anyone wants to read up on it first, which is an awesome idea, maybe study some stuff. What is the actual chapter? It's 1 Corinthians what?
7. Yeah, it's a long one. 8's one of the shorter ones. It goes from like 48 verses to 13. So it's kind of funny. I mean, funny to me. Funny to someone who reads the Bible.
That's awesome. It's going to be great.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. I think we're going to try and do this on a weekly basis. I already know I have a meeting next Tuesday at noon, though. I just realized that. So it's probably going to be Wednesday at 1 next week. So just try and watch for it online. We will get better at setting this up at a certain time every week as a recap for you to do Q&A and for us to answer anything that might have been confusing, or you want to expand on something.
Yeah, if you have questions, this would be a great time to do it, just so we can kind of talk about it and see what your point of view is, like as a reader, and then see what history says. It's such a great time to do it when there's not, 500 people.
Yeah, and if you're watching this after the fact, subscribe so the little bell rings and stuff like that. Like and subscribe, share it. All right, well, we'll see you next time.
Bye.